Welcome to She Sells Radio. We have a very, very juicy topic for you today, which is all about how to drop victim mindset. Now, right off the bat, if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't have victim mindset, Elise, what are you talking about? I want you to actually be really open-minded to the likelihood that some part of you does, because I have yet to meet someone who doesn't have some sort of conditioning around this. And this was inspired by a client I was working with the other day, one of my private clients who came to the realization in our call that that there was a pattern of victim mindset that was repeating with somebody in her life where she was feeling like a victim in this situation. And this is oftentimes these things run unconsciously. We don't even realize why we're feeling disempowered. We don't realize why we're feeling so frustrated in a certain circumstance. And this pops up in all arenas, certainly in people's personal lives, but also I want you to think about in your career and in your business. Do you have clients that you feel like you can't set boundaries with? Do you have team that you feel like run all over you, or you can't like really hold to the next level of accountability? Is there any part of your life where you feel disempowered, where you feel like you are at effect of the world outside of you? Then in that arena, you are demonstrating victim mindset. And here's the key. And so my client and I had such a powerful conversation around this, and I wanted to share just a couple of the highlights of what I shared with her, is that we have to remember, this is why I love studying the power of the mind. The body literally gets conditioned as the mind over time. Now, a lot of this is actually hereditary. So when you start to study epigenetics, you'll notice that, these traits get passed on from generations. And so sometimes we're like, why do I have this pattern? Why do I keep showing up as a victim in this circumstance? Or why do I feel anxiety or fear around this certain thing? I've never had an experience in my life, at least that I remember about it. And the study of epigenetics shows so much of these things are just passed down from generations. But what happens is that when it gets passed down, you literally have a program in your subconscious, and that's also stored in the body, where your body gets addicted to these feelings, these negative emotions. They're very, very addictive, whether it's fear, anxiety, panic. In the realm of victim mindset, it often feels more like disempowerment, right? And so when our body gets addicted and conditioned to those emotions, it needs a hit of them. This is how it works. It's so fascinating when you start to study this. And so what it'll do is it will use outside anything it can to get a hit of that feeling of, we're going to speak specifically to disempowerment in this episode, because that's really, being a victim is disempowered. You will use outside circumstances, people, situations to reaffirm that feeling of disempowerment. And so it doesn't matter if you change the job, get a new team, get a new client, if you don't get to the root of the issue, which is that you have programming as a victim, then you will continue to use someone else to reaffirm that feeling, that old familiar feeling that feels like you. And as I share this, I am sharing this as someone who has also worked through this. So I want you to know, if you're relating to this, if you're like, yep, there are absolutely relationships in my life where I know I feel disempowered. I get it. I've been there. I get to work through this with you too, but it doesn't have to stay that way. And I want you to think about the future version of you, the version of you who has everything she wants or he wants. What is that feeling like? Is there any ounce of victim in that future? Likely not, hopefully not, right? If you're consciously creating your future, if you're consciously designing your future, my guess is you feel empowered in that future. You feel free, you feel abundant, you feel unlimited. So in that instance, that old victim habit, it's not in alignment with where you're going. But you're not going to be able to get to the future you if you keep holding on to that same pattern and conditioning. And so a few things that you can start to do if you're listening to this and you're like, yep, I relate to this. I'm realizing I have victim mindset. I never thought I did, because a lot of times we don't think we do. And that's the thing. We label victim with like a very narrow box. We don't think that we would fall in that category. But I love the way Joe Dispenza defines it, which is anytime you think that you are at effect of your outer circumstances and that you're not in control, that is victim mindset. So it's like we all come up against that at times, right? So to me, knowing what it is and being able to work through it in real time is really powerful. And so the thing I had my client do first when we started talking about this is like, where do you feel it in your body? Just start to notice, like, where is this emotion stored in your body? Because your emotions get stored in different parts of your body. Again, the body becomes the mind, and it starts to crave that emotion. It's like a hit to that center that it needs. And so for her, it was her stomach, and that's the third center. That's your solar plexus. That's the area of willpower. And so that's where I feel it too. I would imagine, I haven't done research into this, but I would imagine for any of us, when we feel disempowerment, it's probably in that center, because that's the center of the will, right? That's the center of where you get to rise above your circumstances. But if you're feeling like you can't, then it feels disempowering, right? So we want to start to notice it and almost disassociate from it a bit. Not that, like, we want to know it. And I'm going to give you some things to do in a moment to know it. But when you realize, oh, that's not me per se, that's just that old emotional addiction. And it's so interesting. Okay, here's where it's stored. So now I'm going to start to get familiar with it, and I'm going to start to notice it when it comes up. So we want to start to notice and not just let it run on autopilot all the time behind the scenes, because then we're not going to be able to fix it. And so the next thing that I had this client do that I've also done that's really powerful is literally write out. I want you to get out a sheet of paper. I've got a Word doc on my computer. It's right on my desktop, so I see it all the time, but a side-by-side comparison of the old thoughts and personality versus the new thoughts and personality that you're going to be creating and stepping into. Because as Joe Dispenza says, your personality creates your personal reality. So if you want a new personal reality, you've got to create a new personality. And so, but we got to get familiar with what's the old personality. When does that show up? What are the thoughts that she has? How does she act in these situations? And so for me, when I really got into this, I made a list and I made it a spreadsheet. I mean, talk about sexy, right? For inner work. I made a spreadsheet, but it was helpful to see side by side. And it was like on the left column was old personality. But I listed out, what are the old thoughts? What are the old actions? And certainly for me, going into disempowerment and victim mode was one of those in there. And then on the other side, though, it was, okay, well, what's the new personality? And how does she act? And how does she feel? And starting to become more familiar with her. So we want to be able to, almost as the observer, look at these old programs, look at these old conditions and know them and realize when, and look, sometimes when you're in it, you can't catch it. Like, that's just, what do they say? You can't read the label from inside the bottle. So this is the importance of review, like taking some time out of your day at the end of the day or the beginning of the day to review how you're showing up and how you're doing, and really study yourself. But as much as you can, catch yourself in the old program and realize, oh, that's the old me showing up here. That's the old addiction to disempowerment. Okay, like, body, I hear you that you're addicted to this emotion, but guess what? That's not in alignment with the future of where I'm going. So I'm going to show up differently. I'm going to learn to think a new thought in this situation that's going to trigger a different emotion. What would a really empowered individual do in this circumstance? What would someone who really believed in herself do in this circumstance? What would the highest, most exalted version of me do in this circumstance? And you want to learn to review it, and you want to learn to get familiar with it. And so this is the power of end of day review and planning for the next day. And this is something I do just briefly at the end of the day, is kind of sit and oh, you may hear my little puppy coming in the background. You want to talk about disempowerment, Mona? Let's talk about empowerment. So anyway, so So I'll sit there and just kind of review. And it's like, okay, where did I do great today? Like, what did I do really well? And review back on that. Okay, I want to keep repeating that and doing that again tomorrow. And then where did I fall back into the old patterns? What situation triggered that? And where did I forget what I'm doing here? And remembering that and then saying, okay, how am I going to do it differently tomorrow when I have this situation again? Because I know I will, because we keep getting presented with situations that are going to help us overcome these old patterns until we truly have overcome them. How am I going to do it differently? How am I going to show up differently? So that review is so critical. And then the other thing that this is why I love Joe Dispenza's meditations. He's getting a lot of shout outs in this episode, but I've really used his work specifically to drop those old emotional patterns and create a new personality. And I do it all the time. I'm a work in progress too. But you've got to condition your body to new emotions. The body is addicted to those old emotions. Your body is addicted to anxiety, fear, panic, disempowerment, right? You know your go-tos as I say these out loud. Well, just like it got addicted to those, you can get it addicted to the emotions you actually want to experience. Joy, love, peace, gratitude, nobility, passion, excitement, empowerment, love, love of life, excitement for your future. But it's a matter of consciously practicing those emotions every day. So this morning I did a walking meditation outside of our house. And it's always funny when you do a walking meditation, like one of Dr. Joe's, because there's parts of it where you just kind of stand there. And it was pretty early out here, but there were definitely still people out. And I was like, do I look like Walking Dead, just like standing here on the side of the road while these other people are running by me? But the point of the meditation I did this morning and why I love so many of his is it's all about conditioning your body to higher level emotions. So this morning, as I walked as the person who has my future and practice, it was just such a beautiful, it was maybe 75 minutes. So it was a longer one, but such a beautiful experience of practicing just so much gratitude and so much love and so much joy and so much freedom and feeling that. And I knew in that moment, you got to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. I knew that I was consciously conditioning my body to those emotions that I want to live in more, because I also know we can't think greater than our emotional state. So there's science behind this. There's so much science behind this. And it's so important to know that if you want to create a higher level reality for yourself, well, you got to come at it from an elevated emotion, because you cannot think greater than your emotional state. So if you want to create a reality where there's a lot of money, a lot of clients, a lot of opportunities, beautiful home, right? You're not going to get there from a victim mindset. You're not going to get there from a state of disempowerment. You're going to get there from the place of feeling like it's already done. What are the feelings you're going to have when those things happen? And then from that state, and not just conjuring it during your meditation in the morning, because that's one part of it and that's important. But if you then go back to the old you the whole rest of the day, nothing's really changed. So your job is to consciously practice being in those emotions, cultivating those emotions throughout the day. Not that you're not going to get triggered, not that there's not going to be a moment where you forget and you drop back into where you were, but as soon as you notice, you want to get back on track. And then when you do, when you're operating from those higher level emotions, you'll have an idea drop in, you'll have clarity, you'll have an inspired inspiration. How's that for you? To do something that's actually going to move you closer to that future. And that's also where the magic happens. That's where the synchronicities happen. That's where it feels like that effortless achievement, like, oh, like, wow, I can't believe how easy it is. I'm getting chills while I say this because I love this. This is like the most fun state to be in, where what you want is just coming to you and you don't even feel like you're having to do that much for it. It's so worth it. It's so worth it, but you've got to be conscious of it. So whatever the emotional addiction is for you that you're ready to drop, whether it's victim mindset, whether it's overwhelm, anxiety, whatever it is, you can apply these same principles to it. And I'd love to hear how it goes for you. send me a DM. I'm at Elise Archer on all social. You can also take a screenshot of this episode and tag me and let me know what stood out to you about this episode. I want to connect with you and certainly support you on your journey as well. So this was we were a little hard hitting in this, but it doesn't serve anyone to not speak truth and not get right to the root of the issue. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for listening. And I will see you on our next episode of She Sells Radio.